these issues a bit further with our esteemed guest who is joining us this morning from Boston, Massachusetts. She is Dr. Jocelyne Cesari, who is a professor of religion and politics at the University of Birmingham. She's also a visiting professor at the Harvard Divinity School. Jocelyne, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us here in Scope. What do you make of Macron's statement? For Muslims, they felt, at least within France I'm speaking about, they feel stigmatized because of that speech.
First, let's say that, as you mentioned, this is not the first time. Actually, you can trace back to the late 1980s, the attempt by the French state to regulate and control the expression of Islam in public space. You know, what's called the headscarf affair started then and actually never ended until it was cemented or solidified into the law of 2004 that prohibits religious signs in public schools. And the controversy has been ongoing. It's about not only the dress code, but the gender relation in the public space, and so on. So in this particular angle, Macron's proposal is not so much, innovative. And the second perspective that explains his discourse is also the fact that there is a war on terror. And the French have also been very much at the forefront of controlling and regulating Islam in the name of security. Actually, for the French, it even started before 9/11, in 1995, when there was a bombing in the metro related to the civil war in Algeria. And the Vigipirate law, which is the equivalent of high security law, has been installed at this time and was never abolished and has been implemented since then. And at the time, I remember I was still in France. To carry a Quran, what could bring you to the police? So you see here, there is not something new. What is new is the term he's using. This is the first time I hear that, which is separatism, which is a very heavy term, because it can also apply besides Islam to lots of other groups, like territorial minorities. You know, this is serious in the sense that beyond the measure themselves, there is a symbolic here. Again, the targeting a particular religious group make it even more illegitimate in the national community.
But then, Jocelyne, I wonder, and of course you know this better than I do probably, that there are so many Muslims in France, and they've been there for enough generations now that they are very much part and parcel of society, and as French citizens, etc. Why now? Like, what do you see about the timing of all of this? And then what is the plan for the near future and the long-term future? I mean, is it to sideline the Muslims or to just, try to, I don't know, have them further assimilate in ways that they may not even be comfortable in giving up their respective values and culture?
Why now? Multiple polling that have been done recently show that actually the majority of French agree with the opinion that Islam is a danger for the French national community. So it is a very easy, I would say, political move that to surf on this kind of opinions, and people and political actors before Macron have done that. In terms of restriction, I would like to say that sadly the surveys we have done show that these restrictions have been going on now for more than 20 years. Beyond the law against religious signs in public schools, the practice of every day in the public space, in administration, in state or governmental offices, in the banks, everywhere, Muslims who are visibly Muslim and observant Muslims are going through discrimination. What the law will do is to give these practices even more legitimacy. And it goes to the point that if you are an observant Muslim And if you are conservative, which in itself is not a sin or a crime, right? I mean, civic sin or crime, that will put you at risk. Because these signs of religious observance will be read as signs of uncivility or uncivism. And that's what is really serious here.
So how has it come about, do you think, then Jocelyne, that the French have been convinced to look at Islam and Muslims in this very negative light? You know, as you've pointed out now, these restrictions have been in place for about 2 decades now. I mean, that's worrying because, as I said to you as well, and as you well know, that Muslims are still living there. I mean, there are still Muslim women who wear the hijab. There are still Muslims who would be considered, quote unquote, conservative, but they're still very much part of French society, and I imagine want to be part of French society, as they regularly say as well. So what's to be done of them? I mean, what's the plan?
Unfortunately, there is no real plan. What is worrisome is that this particular targeting of Muslim is unique in the sense that this discourse on religion in public space, on religious practice in the secular French public space, unfortunately involve only Muslim. And this is why it's a problem, because everywhere you have people in their religious tradition who are particularly pious. Does that make them uncivic or bad citizens? This is what I've been saying for a long time. This is the discourse that the French should have. This is a discussion that should involve not only the Muslim leaders, but the Jewish leaders, the Christian leaders, and have a whole discussion on what does it mean to be religious and citizen in French country. The issue is that this is only targeting Muslims. And the more the French do that, the more the frustration grows among the French youth, the Muslim youth, and the more the discourse of radical global movement is attractive to them. And I think it's a vicious circle in which the French, unfortunately, especially in their political elite, are not ready to get out or to break.
And on that point that you just made there, it's an important one, right? Because hatred or prejudice, or however we want to term what's happening here towards Muslims, will not remain limited to Muslims, I would imagine. I mean, if we look at history, contemporary and even beyond that in the past, we've always seen that if you have prejudice and bias towards one group, it's very easy to then translate that to other groups as well, right? It's like a wildfire type situation. Do you think that should be of concern then to all religious communities in France?
You're absolutely right. The surveys we have now show that in the last 25 years, the discrimination by state organizations and by governmental groups have been on the rise for Muslims first, but then all other religious groups. The moment the state takes initiative to control a particular religion, it will apply, and it does apply to all the others. Again, this data are there. It is not discussed in the French public space, and that's a very serious political deficit right there. And also, I would say that there is something to do in the civil society about creating a broader discourse among religious groups and creating some kind of cooperation to have a more coherent discourse that is not only Muslim defending themselves against this particular bias. It has to be broader than Muslims themselves. That's what also I have been saying. The more it's only a one way or one discussion between Muslims and French institutions, it does increase the idea that Islam is exceptional.
Right. Okay, we'll have to leave there as a final, Jocelyne, but we do sincerely appreciate your taking your time out of your busy schedule to speak to us this morning. That was Jocelyne, who was speaking to us this morning from Boston, Massachusetts, sharing her expertise about the relation that Muslims have with their own country, i.e. France. They've been there for generations. They are very much contributing members to society, as much as the narrative is that, you know, they're ghettoized, etc. That ghettoization has not happened in a vacuum. That's a situation that has been brought about. And now this talk of Islamist separatism, as Macron, the French president, says, that's all troublesome, not just for Muslims, of course, as I've spoken to with Jocelyne as well about that. This will translate, and this will move on then to other religious groups who should be viewing any such bill that is set to pass in France with a lot of worry, because this will not just target Muslims. This will one day in the near future, God forbid, of course,